3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being with us. Lots to get to on today's program. Plenty of Gamecock storylines. We'll talk with our good friend David Cloninger on the beat for the Post and Courier. In fact, DC will join us coming up in about 15 minutes or so. So we'll just jump right into talking to David. Try to get as much as we can in on the number one women's team, number one seed at least, women's team, going into the tournament this week here at CLA for a couple of games, we hope. That's the goal. Right? That's the goal.
I feel pretty good about them. I do too. A couple games.
I do too. Should we check? See, I don't want to do this because it makes it. I don't want to look at the BPI, but I'm going to.
It's probably 100.
It's not actually, which is good.
Tennessee Tech probably has a 0.1%.
No, it's right at 1.0%. So that means they've run
flat one.
They've run this thing 10,000 times, and 1% of the time Tennessee Tech beats South Carolina. Spread on the game, Elijah Campbell. Would you like to hazard a guess?
I'm going to say 39.5 points.
Higher?
49.5 points.
Lower?
45.5.
45.5. Well done.
Oh, man. That's a big point spread.
Would you like to know what the money line is?
Oh, my God. I would probably have to bet, like...
Well, let me make it easy for you.
Let's see.
There's no money line. They didn't even put one. They didn't even put one on there.
They should just have one for Tennessee Tech. Like, if you put money on Tennessee Tech and they win, $1 to win, $7,000.
Yeah, like plus 10,000. Something. Anyway, DC will join us on that. We'll probably just one quick question to David about the decision of the men's program to not go to the NIT. If you didn't get with us yesterday, we didn't discuss this at length. I guess we went like maybe a segment and a half or so on it. Not here to beat up on anybody. I threw out something on Twitter Sunday night saying I think if you get the chance, you should go. That was all I said, really. But I'm not here to, just take Lamont and Jeremiah to task and say, how could you possibly not go to the NIT? This is a travesty. I didn't do any of that.
Not mad, just disappointed.
Yeah. And we'll talk to David about the baseball team, who gets right back at it tonight. And this could be an interesting game for them, It really could. I don't know how mentally stung the boys are. Don't have to remind any of you of how painful a loss Sunday afternoon was when you've got a 2-run lead going to the top of the ninth at home, and you find a way to blow it. And you blow it with a couple of defensive miscues, still had an offensive opportunity in the bottom of the 10th, and your best player at the plate with the winning run on base couldn't get it done. Again, not here to say it's Ethan Petrie's fault. Not doing that either, really. I go back to ninth inning defense, but there were a host of things. Regardless, they all mounted up and forced a Carolina loss, if you will. So right back on the horse tonight with Chad Holbrook's Charleston team coming up here. They'll certainly be raring to go, and could be a really interesting ball game. Jarvis Evans is pitching really well, and he's been doing a nice job in the midweek and has basically just cemented that spot. My only question, and he'll go tonight, my only question is, with Stone having a rough outing on Friday, just how much Paul Maneri and Terry Rooney are still really looking at this rotation. It is absolutely a work in progress. How much of one? I think McCoy's got his role pretty good. Do you move McCoy to Friday? If you throw Jarvis tonight, and let's say he goes 5 or 6 and he looks good again the way he's been looking, is there an outside opportunity to see him? Or, as Coach told you and me last week, with Charleston this week, North Carolina next week, and a PC team the following week that beat Alabama a couple weeks ago, these midweek games are crucial, but so are games like a Friday night in conference play or a Sunday home game. All of them are crucial when you want to host and you want to do the things that this program expects to do. And, this isn't a knock on Coach at all, I assure you. And all of you know this, though. You don't reset expectations around here. I've said going into this season, you should still have those base expectations. And for me, and I know a lot of you agree, you should expect to host in the NCAA tournament when you're South Carolina baseball. Again, you will not always do it. There will be valid reasons why. There will be disappointing reasons why. But there will be times when you do not. But if you lower that expectation to just, hey, let's just get to the tournament, I don't believe that's good. I think you've got to keep the bar set. And Paul Maneri knows this. Paul Maneri, I didn't like Paul was at some place where they didn't have high expectations, right? I've told you before, buddies of mine I've gotten to know through the years at media days used to be envious of those of us who worked in Columbia and Baton Rouge, because it's like, man, y'all get all spring to talk about baseball, and like we can't do that. Well, now in Knoxville they can, or now in Oxford or Memphis they can. With Memphis they've got Arkansas and Ole Miss to kind of discuss when they want to talk college baseball. Just things like that, But we'll talk to David about all of those things. Mike Yuva's going to join us at 4:15. Mike and many others down at Pro Day today. Yours truly missing my first Pro Day probably since Steve Spurrier got hired. I had an appointment this morning that could not be avoided, and so I missed. I like being down at Pro Day. It's fun. There's a vibe. There's a look. A lot of it is sometimes, admittedly, standing around and waiting.
But, a lot of that.
But a lot of life is sometimes standing, hurry up and wait kind of thing. But we've had, back in the day too, man, I guess the year Clowney was coming out, Michael Haney and I we did like 5 hours of live radio from the north end zone, the student section end zone. And I mean, Coach Spurrier came by, Whammy came by, Lorenzo Ward. Shane was already gone by then. But, I mean, several GA came by and hung out with us. A couple of the players came by and hung out with us. A couple of the national media guys came. It was a hell of a day, man. And that's like the peak Pro Day broadcast I've done. But, I mean, even the last few years with Shane and Dowell coming by and just sharing and things like that. So, I missed it. When I say I missed it, it's like, man, it's Pro Day. And I was thinking back. I told you, I was like, I'm not even sure. But I'd say first one I've missed in like close to 20 years, man. So, oh, well, it happens. I'll be back next year.
The one consistent, I guess, event you go to every year is Pro Day. I find that interesting.
Yeah, well, I used to do everything, and now, as I've told you, just I've got the last chances to be a dad, and so a lot of the things that I always went and did, I am now doing dad stuff until the time comes when there's no more. Because I did. I don't want oh, poor Jay. I'm not here to do that. But for many, many, many years, I did put dad stuff to the side to grow my career, right? And I just came to a point where I was talking with my family and our old boss, Brent Johnson, and a few others, like, hey, I got to find a way to segment some of this because I can't keep just only. And they're like, yeah, of course. So, yeah. But you don't know me from the guy that was at every press conference and every game and courtside at basketball. And you don't know that guy. But trust me, he existed.
He was there.
He was there.
And it was at Pro Day.
He was at Pro Day all the time. He was at Pro Day all the time. So it was fun. Anyway, all right. We'll also get into a few things around the NCAA basketball tournament, primarily the men's side, although I do believe the women's side will follow suit. I haven't seen or read as much consternation over the women's tournament selection process as we have the men's. One of the things that I brought up yesterday, and I know some others have, Dan Patrick brought it up on his show this morning with Seth Davis of CBS Sports. And that's the notion of, again, having a live camera, having a live feed of the committee meeting as it unfolds over however many hours. And look, it's not like you're going to watch it. This wouldn't be something that you would put on even, say, I don't know, CBS Sports Network.
Wouldn't even put it on C-SPAN.
Well, C-SPAN too. But you could put it on, on CBS is on the Paramount, Paramount Plus. Put it on that, right? Or ESPN Plus if they wanted to farm it out to them. Or even at NCAA.com or a YouTube channel, man. I don't care. There's multiple ways on the interwebs to do that. And Seth's point is like he got it, Elijah, but then he's like, yeah, but if people feel like they can speak freely and then they know there's cameras and microphones, will they? And then I'll say, I get that notion, but what are you afraid of?
Right.
Like, what are you protecting? Fear may not be it, but what are you protective of? Or what are you protecting from? And I was joking with you earlier. Unless you're going to say Coach so-and-so is the biggest SOB I've ever met, and I hope he, whatever, falls down a well or something, like, okay.
Yeah, probably don't want that broadcast.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you wouldn't be saying that in the committee room anyway. Now, you might say it somewhere, I don't know. And you might have those feelings about it. And you know what? I'm sure there is a Coach so-and-so every now and then that is a giant SOB that you just as soon not reward with a bid to the NCAA.
Especially when the people in there are athletic directors. Those athletic directors probably had to fire some of those coaches that get discussed. And
that comes around, I think, to the biggest point, man. And we'll discuss this a little bit more later, but I'd love to hear from you guys, 803-404-6100. I just think you can't have sitting athletics directors and conference commissioners be on that committee. I on any of them. And I know Coach Tanner chaired the baseball committee a few times, and I'm sure Jeremiah's served on something in his capacity as an AD at TCU for a long time, and on I could go. And I know that athletics directors are very knowledgeable, and it's not that they aren't qualified. It's that they have an inherent interest in their school or their conference if it's a commissioner. And that's okay, too. But Nicole Auerbach, now of NBC, formerly of The Athletic, had a great piece at NBCSports.com today about, and I'm with her. She was like, for Bubba Cunningham, AD at North Carolina, chairman of the committee, I know he has to recuse himself from every second's worth of discussion about his school, and so does any other AD or a conference commissioner. That's a conference commissioner, especially. Then you're talking about double-digit schools. Like, whoa, bro. Unless it's like the Ivy commissioner. They're the only one left with 8, I think. I kid. But, you can't get away from some of that, even if Bubba's on the up and up. And he is. He's a good guy.
Seems like it.
But as she kept saying, the optics were bad. And I would agree with her. Now, who do you put in there? Former coaches? Give me Jay Wright in there. But give me Roy. Give me Tony Bennett. I'm fine with that. Give me. You know what? Give me Seth Davis.
Joe Lenardi.
Yeah.
People who are paid to watch the sport.
Give me
every
Joey
day.
Brackets. Let him be. Why not have him be on the committee?
Or people who cover the sport and watch it enough to where they can parse through some of the data and know what it means.
Yeah.
Like, I'm convinced the only reason North Carolina got in was they saw that they're higher ranking net than a couple of teams they're on the bubble with.
Yeah.
And there's more to the net's not a power ranking. I wonder how many of them understand the net is not a power ranking.
I'm not sure.
And that's the big thing too. Like, as a sitting AD, how much other than your school's basketball can you watch?
Yeah.
It's limited.
Yeah.
Just like, because you have a very big job to do.
Yeah, you're watching
running your athletics department, right?
And if you're an AD, not only is it basketball season, but in the middle of the year, you got swimming, and you got some schools have gymnastics or whatever you got to go do.
Like, there are people that made decisions on this field that, like, last week were probably watching their college baseball teams.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, because it's that's your
programs.
programs.
Right, that's your job.
But, like, if you're going to fill out the postseason, it has to be with people who watch just a religious amount of this stuff and have an enhanced understanding.
We'll talk to David Cloninger on the other side of the break. Gamecock hoops, a little Gamecock baseball, and more from the PNC beat writer. You are listening to the Postgame Show. 3:20 on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. Postgame show rolling on. Mike Hubert coming up in just a little bit. We'll have a drive around the SEC later on. And again, will this be the final year of 68 schools in the NCAA tournaments? We'll get into those things and more. But right now, we'll talk Gamecocks. Always a pleasure to discuss that and more with our good friend David Cloninger on the beat for the Post and Courier. Good to have you, sir. How disappointed, if at all, should South Carolina fans be that the men's basketball team did not take its automatic invite into the NIT?
Oh, well, guys, I think that they should be a little disappointed because it was a chance to keep playing. And no matter if you think that a 12-20 team deserves playing the postseason or not, they had a chance to do so. That was the rule. They are taking advantage of the rule. They could have done it. That said, if Colin Murray-Boyles is dealing with injuries, which he was, do you really think that it would have been fun to watch them play again? So I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think there's a lot of people who said, just get this season over with and start rebuilding your team. And there is a time factor to doing that in terms of NIL deals. And there were some that said, hey, if you earned a chance, you ought to play, that you're doing the kids a disservice. So until we poll each and every one player on the team, we'll never know a true answer. But I can tell you that I'm not crying a lot of tears over not having to watch that team play basketball again.
Yeah, that's fair. We had about a 50-50 response. We had a big response on yesterday's show, but I'd say it's kind of 50-50 on, yeah, they should have, and no, they shouldn't have. So pretty interesting stuff. David, let's go to Dawn Staley's women's team. Dawn is doing her best, I think, to say no chip on the shoulder, but she was certainly, whether it was nationally or with you guys on the beat locally Sunday night, a little disappointed in the committee in terms of how they scheduled. Number one team in strength of schedule, beat 2-1 seeds, and yet it's 2 wins over 1 seeds, and yet somehow doesn't find their way as the number 1 overall seed. A, how big a deal? B, is there now, at least for everybody else in the field, an unwanted chip on the Gamecocks' shoulders?
I mean, you're always looking for advantages this time of year, Jay. So to answer your B question first, if South Carolina chooses to make it that way, then okay. Then the rest of the other teams might be like, man, they're good enough already. Do we got to deal with this too? That they're coming in here mad? So we'll see how that works out. It's easy to say that kind of thing when you go and win after it. So we'll see how that one goes. As for A, yeah, I mean, I think they still should have been the number 1 seed. But the fact is that they lost by 29 at home to another number 1 seed, and everybody in the country saw it. Mm-hmm. So you can't do that, especially when you've had a couple of other losses. And that said, I don't think it's that big of a deal, if it's any deal at all, because if you look at the advantages the number 1 seed gets, the most rest between games, and supposedly an easier road to the Final Four, USC got that without being the number 1 seed, overall seed. They get the same amount of rest as UCLA did, playing Friday, Sunday games, and then going, if they get to Tampa, playing a Saturday, Monday. And then you look at their bracket, the 16 teams in their bracket. Do you see anybody that you're afraid of when it comes to the South Carolina team? I certainly don't.
Right. And they're the closest to their regional. So there's that part of it too.
Yeah. I mean, that most certainly helps. But, I mean, looking through this region right now, David, that's kind of the place I wanted to take you next. I mean, Duke ended the year pretty well. I haven't been overly impressed with North Carolina. West Virginia's got one player that I think is one of the more exciting ones to watch nationally. But if there is any team that can maybe match up differently with the South Carolina team than anybody else in the country, is there one where you think that might be able to push them a little bit?
Well, you look at those other teams in there, Elijah, and I personally think that North Carolina might be a little bit trickier than Duke, despite the way that the regular season ended. But you look at that Vanderbilt team, and it's just because it has a team with a superstar player on it. Now, USC has been able to contain Michaela Blakes very well in the 2 times that they've played this year, so I don't think it would be any kind of a problem. But you do know that rule of 3 sometimes come back in. You don't want to face a team 3 times in a season. However, USC has generally ignored that rule in the past and has ignored it this year by playing Texas for a third time and then winning that one as well, even though they lost the second one. So I would say a Vanderbilt, might be a little tricky if they match up with them. But right now it is kind of looking like, so North Carolina again in the postseason. That's the 5th time since 2014. We'll see what happens. And if it doesn't work out that way, maybe a little tricky. Playing Alabama in basically what's a home game in Birmingham. I mean, they could, go and start their Vic Schaefer kind of complaints about being like, I got to play Alabama at their home court. I don't know what's going on. Well, you know how you avoid that? You win the game. So, there.
Easy enough. David Cloninger with us talking Gamecocks. So, switch you over, sir, to baseball. Beating them up about Sunday is not something that anybody wants to do, but you got to look at the last one you did. What have you done for me lately? And you split the first 2, a lot of runs scored, and defensively just did not hold on to it. Then had a chance offensively. How concerning is not just the loss, David, on Sunday afternoon, but how South Carolina lost?
Well, Jay, that's the thing. I mean, you do look at the X's and O's and say, well, the late inning pitching fell down, the late inning defense fell down, and those are concerns because especially defensively, you were supposed to be really good at that this year. But that said, Jay, just at the overall picture, even with, 35 games left to play, 27 in the conference, it's hard not to look at how that series went and said, that's probably going to be the season right there. You look at the next 2 series at number 3, home versus number 1. You look at all the series after that and said, you let one get away that you easily could have had. And now you're worrying about this lingering throughout the rest of the year if you come up in more late inning situations and say, man, are we going to get it done this time instead of going out there and just playing your game? You don't want to have to worry playing this game, especially if you're a pitcher. And now whoever's pitching out there is like, is my defense going to be behind me for my 9th inning? So it's not good. They had a series that they really needed to win in the bag, and they let it go. They have one SEC win now. I'm thinking they need to look at around 13 to feel confident about getting into the NCAA tournament. It's bad to say this, considering it's South Carolina baseball, guys, but you look at the next 6 conference games, and you might be thinking, man, if they get one of those, they'll be doing good. Yeah. But the more I'm reminded of it, 2010 was 15 years ago, guys. 15. And 2012 was 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm nostalgic and disappointed for what they had, but that's gone. That is long gone.
Yeah, and one thing this team's figuring out, too, is some of the starting pitching roles. We've already seen a couple of guys with Stone and Becker getting shots at Friday night starts in really big games and both having disappointing starts in those games. I think McCoy's pretty settled into his role. I don't think I see Dylan Eskew moving from his. But what do you see as like maybe the ideal Friday night starter for this team and how they might handle trying to figure out who that is?
Well, it's tough to say. I mean, asking what went wrong with Brandon Stone in the first inning last weekend, Paul Maneri said, I don't think he got enough warm-up pitches. Look, what? I mean, did he not get in the bullpen on time to start throwing? Did he not get enough pitches on the mound to start the first? That seems like something that easily could have been controlled. Now, if he's just thinking that, like, yeah, he didn't look himself and maybe he didn't warm up the proper way, okay, you got to fix that. Give him another chance to fix that. As for Matthew Becker, I mean, he got pulled out of the starting rotation for a reason. He got put in there in the late inning, and he couldn't throw strikes. So you can't put a guy out there that's not going to get the job done. You just can't. So no matter how much they view him right now, it's got to come with a very, very microscopic look and saying, is this really what you want to do? I realize the only way any athlete gets out of a slump or a bad run is to go out there and keep playing. But you've got to go and start stacking together wins, and you need to get them in the conference. So if that means that you have to go against script and maybe take a midweek starter like Jarvis Evans is tonight and say, we're going to need you on the weekend, maybe for not this coming series, but the next one against Tennessee, I think you got to do that.
Yeah, and he's got some pretty good numbers. It'll be interesting to see. Appreciate you, sir. As always, we'll do it again real soon. Thank you.
Take care, fellas. Thanks for having me.
That's our good friend David Cloninger, DCP&C, to follow on Twitter, postandcourier.com. Sign up for David's newsletter as well. Good stuff in there. We'll continue this discussion when the postgame show returns. Talking a little Gamecocks, got some hoops and baseball in with our buddy David Cloninger, and David left us talking about Gamecock pitching, and Elijah and I brought this up a little bit earlier too. It's how much of a work in progress is the Gamecock starting rotation, and how much of a concern should that be? And, nobody wants to sit here and be alarmist, to those of you fans listening, but we have to be realistic in our assessments. And South Carolina, in its two biggest series to date, has had two different pitchers that this coaching staff hoped would go do a good job falter, pretty badly. And so now are you looking at do you give Brandon the opportunity to get back on the hill Friday night, considering what you think he's capable of? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't want to just continue to figure something else out, right? And to the point that Paul Maneri made with Elijah and me last week, Jarvis Evans, who goes tonight. Look, this is another big kid. He's 6'4", 2-something. Lefty. 3-0, a 3.63, 19 strikeouts, only 3 walks in 17 and a third. Charleston sends a kid tonight with a pretty high ERA, and he only has 15 strikeouts and 6 walks in 19 and a third. You like Carolina's chances tonight to win this midweek game, but to David's point about Jarvis, hey, you go have another good outing, and it might be, son, we need you. And then listen, I know it changes once you get to higher levels of baseball. But even if you think of somebody like Clayton Kershaw or before him, Randy Johnson, and there are other big, intimidating lefties, I promise you, any of us that have played baseball, there is something mentally that you have to overcome when a big, intimidating lefty is staring you down from the hill. It's a thing. Now, how much of one? To great hitters, it's not a thing at all. But to a lot of guys, it's like, dang. And sometimes, I didn't play Southeastern Conference baseball, okay? But I would still imagine that every once in a while, even if it's just like that, just a quick second, when you're a hitter, you might revert back mentally for just a second to that big, listen, I remember we had a big kid in Little League when I was like 9 or 10. His name was, and a great guy, played on a buddy of mine's team. His name was Jimmy Daniels. Jimmy, if you're listening, what's up? Jimmy was taller than everybody.
Big Jim.
He was a lefty. Jimmy, he was good for a home run a night at the plate, too.
Don't mess around with Jim.
I remember one time I was in center field. His team had just played. And I was in center field warming up before our game. So they played game 1, we played game 2. I remember looking over at him. He was walking behind the park, behind the wall. And I was like, "Hey, did you get one?" And he just held up a ball because you got to keep a home run ball. And then he just held it up and showed it to me. He didn't even say anything. He just kept on walking.
Didn't have to say anything.
He didn't. It was funny. It was funny. I've never forgotten that. But Jimmy was intimidating. And I remember there was a kid that we played in high school from Spartanburg. Just a big, tall kid. Intimidating. It happens. Again, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I'll come back to the more immediate point. The Gamecocks have to figure this out pretty quickly. I'm not saying there aren't, to make a comparison to the baseball team, or to the basketball team, Elijah. I think they've got more horses to run the race, but Paul and Terry are going to have to really quickly now figure out where to slot those horses.
Yeah,
right.
Positioning is the big thing right now. Finding where everybody's most comfortable. Because I think there's pros. If you look at Matthew Becker, you look at Brandon Stone, Jarvis Evans, they are different pros and cons to each pitcher. And just finding out where they're most comfortable is going to be the big thing. And establishing that as soon as humanly possible is going to be a must, because how far into the season last year did we get to where we're like, we still don't know what how to maximize this pitching staff right now. I think it's probably in a better spot than last year, but still, the Friday nights are an important game. It gives you a little bit more leeway, a little more room for error on Saturdays and Sundays. It's a pretty important spot.
Yeah.
And figuring that out is, I would say, a must before you even get into Arkansas.
And like David said, and listen, y'all, those of you who listen routinely and you read David's work every day, David doesn't want to say when you look at your next 6 games, can you go 1-5? But it's a valid question based on what you've seen from this team in the 6 games that you've played against the best competition yet. You're 1-5. And you had chances in multiple games to win. You had some chances against Clemson. You didn't bring the runners in. And Sunday, I think Carolina was like 4 for 20 with runners on base. It's just, you know, and again, I'm not, certainly, I mean, let me stress, I'm not blaming Ethan Petrie. But you feel good, as you and I talked yesterday, you feel good if your best player is at the plate with the winning run on base, that you can get something done. And it's not always going to happen. That's baseball. Baseball's a game of failure. Who fails least? That's baseball. But it becomes a concern between getting roughed up early and having to climb out of a hole because of something a pitcher did or didn't do, and then leaving those, you know, again, to use the old phrase, ducks on the pond, and too many ducks on the pond right now. And those two things do not combine for what you're looking for here.
That's how you lose close games.
Yeah.
That's how you end up. Some people chalk, losing close games up to luck. Sometimes you got to make your own luck. And I think right now this team just has a problem making their own luck when things get really tight like that.
Yeah, I look at Sunday, and this is why I say in any of the sports that we cover and talk about, whether I'm doing it on air or we're just hanging out with our friends or whatever, tell me how you lost. Because sometimes, sometimes you just something happens. Sometimes it's fluky. Sometimes you're just, sometimes you just get pasted. But Sunday afternoon, South Carolina baseball beat itself. And you want to give some level of credit to Oklahoma, but you got to make those defensive plays, man. And when you have guys out there, find ways to bring them across. So it'll be interesting. Tonight, Jarvis Evans on the hill. Again, Daniel Brooks goes for Charleston. Jarvis 3-0 with a 3.63, 17 and a third, 19 strikeouts, 3 walks. Daniel Brooks, a junior righty, 2-1 with a 5.12, 19 and a third, 15 strikeouts, 6 walks. We will have it for you beginning at 6:15, 6:30 is the first pitch. And remember, it's at Segra tonight, Segra Park. Tickets are available. If you've never been over there, and by now most of you probably have, but if you haven't, you should go. It's fun.
Beautiful park.
I love it. And soon enough, it'll be Fireflies time. But tonight, it's the Gamecocks and the Cougars. Lots more to get to. Come back around on some of the issues going on with the NCAA tournament. Is this the last year of 68 schools? We'll discuss as the postgame show continues. Welcome back in. Postgame Show rolls on this Tuesday. Our buddy Mike Yuva will join us coming up in, let's say, 25 minutes or so. 25 minutes-ish. Is that fair?
That sounds fair.
Thanks. I don't want to say like breaking news, but it has just been announced in the last little bit. This came down while we were talking to David, and I've just had a chance to check and see some of these things. Carolina spring game. I think we already knew this, but just to remind you, Friday night, April 18, 7:30. It is free. There will be auctions and experiences that fans can participate in to enhance your spring game through the Forever Garnet Memories. They include a VIP experience, watching warm-ups from the field. Oh, hell yeah. Riding the cocky boost during the greatest entrance in all of college athletics.
I want to do that.
Wonder what that costs.
Got to be at least $20.
To check out the auctions, best thing to do, honestly, is probably link to GamecocksOnline.com and the football page, because I got a really long address in the email that I'm not going to give you over the air. The game will not be televised. Instead, according to what I've got here, and both Alan Cole and Jordan Kay have just put this out, Gamecock fans will, on television at least, get a behind-the-scenes look at spring football practice as part of a South Carolina all-access practice show. ESPN has given SEC member schools the option to either air the spring football game live or on the SEC Network or SEC Network Plus, or provide a 30-minute original spring football show to replace it that would air on ESPN platforms. So there you go. And probably more details on what we'll be doing here at 107.5 The Game. I know yours truly will be covering the Heritage.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Beautiful scenery.
Yeah, and golf. Oh, that's what you meant. Sorry.
You saw your chance.
Sorry.
You took it.
Sorry. You set me up, man.
I did. Yeah, that was an alley-oop.
Thanks.
I am Chris Paul. You're Blake Griffin, and you threw it down.
So, anyway, there you go.
Send it in, Jerome.
All the details on what you can. You know what? Hang on. I want to see what you can bid on. So while we're talking, I may as well at least click the link
to see what all can be bid on.
Warm up. Okay, there's 3 different warm ups and on field 2001 experiences. Starting bid $100. The Cocky Boost experience, starting bid $250.
That is at least $20 at the least. So
spring game VIP experience for 4, starting bid $500. That's all I see right now. So I guess they'll be adding stuff. So starting bid to ride the Cocky Boost $250. Going to go out on a limb, Elijah Campbell. Say it will not close at like $255.
Yeah, I think that one's going to go up a little bit.
Yeah, so you missed
fun
on
experience.
You missed on the $20.
Well, I said at least 20.
Yeah,
and it is definitely more than 20. So technically, I'm not wrong.
I bet you that ends up going for considerably more than $250.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Now I'm not saying it goes for like $20,000, but
we'll get past $1,000. I'm sure.
I think so. I think we get $2,000.
That's pretty cool.
I think we get to $1,000. I wonder. I mean, would someone out there pay 5 figures for that?
I'm sure someone does.
That'd be fun.
I want to drive it. How much to drive it? How much to let me drive it?
That'd be all right. Yesterday's somewhat apropos of this on Dan Patrick, Marvin and Seton apparently next year are going to ask if they, at a Seton Hall UConn game, can be the mascots.
That would be fun. I would love to be cocky for a game.
You know, I think it'd be fun
Like a
for
South
like
Carolina Presbyterian game.
for like 20 minutes, and then you're probably like, man, this thing is hot. This thing is heavy.
This is miserable.
I can't see. Some kid just kicked me. Because, you know, some kid's gonna.
Oh, absolutely. Gonna act up.
You know. And, like, sometimes when kids, like, I always feel bad for that kid that gets scared at a match. Even, like, when I've seen kids get scared at, like, at Disney, you know, like, Mickey Mouse is, like, the most harmless, you know, mascot out there.
Buddy, I guarantee you Purdue Pete has scared some children.
Probably so. There's probably a few, like.
Purdue Pete will scare some adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some
Anyway.
people's sleep paralysis demon is just Purdue Pete staring at you with those big old eyes.
Check out more of that at GamecocksOnline.com for
Haunting.
the spring game info. Again, we'll get into pro day stuff. And again, could we be seeing the final year of 68 schools, which still sounds weird? Hour 2 coming up. Let me tell you about our good friends at Integrated Media. How you watching what you watch? You want to do it better? Maybe you're building or remodeling this year. Start working with Integrated Media now. Get them in touch with your contractor. Get it done right the first time. Don't let your contractor say, hey, I know a guy. I heard horror stories while we were remodeling our home about some of the things that Integrated Media had to go back and fix. So don't let that happen to you. If you've already got a great setup, but you want to go next level with equipment, then Integrated Media can come out to the house and tell you what they've got. Remember, their equipment, same exact prices as anything you buy at the big box store, all right? You're getting the expertise of the staff at Integrated Media. That's the number one thing. You might even gone to the big box store and bought a video doorbell that you now just are afraid to put in because you don't want to do it wrong. They'll come do that for you. Whatever you need when it comes to home theater, home security, and so much more. 803-948-8327. Trust my friends at Integrated Media. 4 o'clock here on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show along with Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips, the two of us inside the Herndon Chevy Studios, downtown Columbia, wherever you might be. We appreciate you choosing to spend some of your afternoon with us. Mike Uva, Gamecocks Central, will join us coming up in about 15 minutes or so. Like a lot of folks over at Pro Day today, it's all done. Gamecocks could be in position for a record-setting draft haul this year. We'll find out. Maybe some other guys positioning themselves for undrafted free agent opportunities. Mr. Uva will discuss that, of course, now, too. He's splitting time covering the New England Patriots. So he's been around a lot more NFL dudes. How much has Mike gleaned from them on what to look for today? We'll talk with him about that coming up in just a little bit. A lot of talk around the NCAA tournament. It officially begins tonight for the men, at least. St. Francis versus Alabama State. I believe that's at 6:30. I need to double check.
Speaking of mascots that give you nightmare fuel, have you seen St. Francis's mascot?
I have not.
The mascot head on that, it's
what are they?
a knight or something,
Okay.
but they have that mascot. They're the Red Flash, but their mascot's like a knight, and his half of that helmet, or I guess the helmet or whatever for the mascot is teeth.
Oh.
His large teeth, very large grin, kind of scary. Not a knight, I think it's like a frog.
I have it. I'll see it tonight, though.
I've seen the picture.
I got you. That'll be tonight. 6:40 is the tip time, is what they tell me here on the interwebs. That'll be followed in Dayton by North Carolina and San Diego State.
It's a friar. His name's Frankie the Friar. So if you get a chance, just Google Frankie the Friar, and this thing is terrifying.
Okay.
Looks like a Disney villain
I don't like that.
with just very large teeth.
Have you seen the BPI on the North Carolina-San Diego State game?
It's probably North Carolina in the upper 60s.
You're right. Well done, sir.
Probably
Ding,
67.
ding. 67% to 33% for the Aztecs of San Diego State. Might we be in a position where there are more games in Dayton or more play-in games? Listen, if we go to 78, then team number 79 is going to be hacked off. This year, team number 69 appears to be, in most people's minds, West Virginia. And I do think West Virginia probably got jobbed a little bit. But as I have also said, go win some more games. Look, North Carolina had one quad one win. And yet they were 13-7. I just still can't believe, honestly, that the Atlantic Coast Conference rates so poorly that 13-7 in the ACC made North Carolina the 68th team, if you will.
Over half the league is really bad. Over half the league's outside the KenPom Top 100.
What happened? That's not a topic I want to get into right now, so I ask that sort of rhetorically for another day. But what happened? I mean, it can't just be that the Southeastern Conference decided to start spending money on basketball. That can't be the only thing.
Well, I think a lot of it's coaching departures. Jim Boeheim's no longer at Syracuse. They did not replace like for like. Right. John Shire is a really good basketball coach. Right. People dogged on Coach K for doing the whole retirement tour thing, but what it did was set John Shire up to know how to run that program and for him to be kind of eased into that role.
Right.
And since he's taken over that role, they've won 2 ACC tournament titles and ACC regular season, and a team this year that is the odds-on favorite to win the national championship.
Yeah, well, and what they're still doing, and I'm sincere when I say this, they continue to recruit at the highest level.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. A lot of schools that have been really good. For the last 3 years before this year, Kenny Payne completely tanked the Louisville program.
Bad. That was
buried it.
Horrible. But, seriously, man, North Carolina, again, they're in, and so that's, on that note, okay, we're in. But North Carolina shouldn't be having the ebbs and flows that they have to where it's a concern as to whether or not you're going to make the tournament. But it leads me in, and I'd like y'all's take on this. Look, I've said many times over the last couple of years, because we can go back a couple of years to when Greg Sankey talked about being on a transformation committee at the NCAA level and maybe upping by 25% the amount of participants in all of the NCAA tournaments, not just basketball or something, that there are so many teams that are spending money and the parity that's been created. Let's find a way to reward them. Let's find a way to give them an opportunity. A lot of pushback from fans in that, hey, that's plenty. Again, I think, Elijah, is the number, what is it, 18, 19%, I think, of Division I schools make this event. and half of them get in automatically. Now, some of those automatic qualifiers are very good teams, right? But some of them aren't. And so, when it comes to the at-large number, that's, and yes, Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, Jim Phillips, yes, they're being self-serving. Because you're right. People will say, well, Jay, they don't want more teams from the WCC to get in or the MAC, not even the MAC, but the MAC. No, you're right. They want more of their 19 and 20 and 21 win teams from their leagues to get in because the net ranking says those teams are pretty good, whatever you want to put into the computers. So, again, I come back around to say I don't necessarily advocate for expansion of this event. I still, in my mind, see it as a 64-school event, right? And I really don't like the fact that they make 16s play into the field of 64. I don't like that. Play-ins should be at-larges and probably these exact kind of teams that Greg Sankey's talking about. But I do think, Elijah, that between the money they can make, the extra money they can make, and the consternation caused, to use that word again, this weekend, with North Carolina and San Diego State. I mean, San Diego State, Final Four a couple years ago. North Carolina is North Carolina. And West Virginia's a good, solid basketball program.
They were good this year.
You don't want to see any more of that. Again, you can always draw a line, and somebody on the wrong side of it is going to feel badly, and there's nothing we can do about that. But at what point can you at least expand this thing out to where a team with a half dozen quad one wins relative to a team with one both get into this because you feel there's some level of worth? I don't know. So are we going to get to a 16-school play-in round? I think we are. And I don't know how quickly they can change it, but
there's a logistical nightmare to that too. I mean, you're going to add more schools. I mean, you're just going to cram up. You're going to send 8 different schools to one site to play these games.
Nah, you'll pick a second play-in round location. It'll be Dayton. I think Dayton's done a nice job with it, and it's weird. Dayton's sort of become kind of a kitschy thing. Those games in Dayton. It's almost like Omaha, but in reverse.
Right.
For
some schools, you don't want to be. You don't want to be in Dayton.
Yeah, you'll pick it's Dayton, purgatory. And I don't know. Oklahoma City. I don't know. Something. So, or Albuquerque. I don't care. I mean,
at this point, the more teams you add into it, too, you're creating a tournament before a tournament, and the whole thing is just having one large tournament.
Right.
And that's, I don't know, that's chaotic, and that it's senseless because what formula they have now works. It absolutely works.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that we feel the need to just give more bids to teams that wouldn't have any business playing in this thing.
Yeah. All right, listen. I hate to sound like I'm sitting on the fence. If you said, Jay, if you asked me the question, Jay, would you prefer they expand this tournament? No. That's my answer. No. But it's not hard to look at what's happening and understand why it really isn't a matter of if, but when. And I know, again, to a guy like you, and there are millions that feel like you do, Mr. Campbell.
Majority of the American population.
That just want to swig a big bottle of Pepto or Kaopectate and go like, ugh. But I'm afraid it's coming. And I'm just thinking that because of some of the things we've seen this year and with the changes that will also be coming for the coming school year with the House settlement and all of that.
The billions and billions of dollars made on the TV deal is not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough.
Right. We need
not
even
enough.
more.
We need more.
And if everybody can get an extra million or two, then they will. And I think that's where it's headed. I really do. But I'd love to have y'all weigh in. I might throw up a flash poll in a minute. Let's get to Bill real quick. He's got a question about some of this. Hey, Bill, good afternoon.
Hey, Jay. Enjoy listening to you when I'm in the car.
Thank you.
So my question is, these play-in games, why have the play-ins for the 11th or 12th seed? Why are they not all playing in for that 16th seed? I mean, if they're playing in for an 11th seed, then why weren't they maybe given a 12th seed and somebody's bumped and had to play for a 16 seed? I mean, I've never really heard an explanation of why they do it at 11 or 12. Can you enlighten me?
Yeah, it's a good question. And basically, and Elijah, you supplement here as necessary. The 11-12 line, Bill, is basically where over time the NCAA and its various committees have said this is sort of our cutoff point for at-large bids for these last four in types, first four out types from the power conferences, and not just the power conferences. I mean, you could get your teams from the American and maybe even some of the better teams from CUSA that might, couple of those leagues that are two bid leagues, maybe a three bid league. The American is certainly not that. How many American schools are in this year, Elijah? Like 5? I don't even know, but regardless, like that 11-12, that's the cutoff line for that's why, like, even Bill, to give you another example, in the NCAA baseball tournament, that's why you'll see power conference schools be 3 seeds. You won't ever see an SEC school be a 4 seed. So to come to your point about a 16, all of these 16s, including the ones that have to play in, they won a conference tournament. They're in automatically, but they're not into the full field, which I think does them a disservice. I'd rather see all the games in Dayton be these games on the 11-12 seed line and have these power conference, or again, the bigger schools. I don't want to, the power conference to the mid-majors. I'd rather see them playing in to the field. If you get the automatic spot, and I realize too, hey, if you're in Dayton, you're in the NCAA tournament. But I'd rather see them be in the full field of 64 automatically, and again, let others fight it out. But that's what they do there, Bill. That's why it's done the way it's done for the 11s and 12s.
Well, and being old school as I am, I mean, I was around when we were still in the ACC. So to see North Carolina have to fight its way in, I'm like, yeah, okay, good luck.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I know, man. That's the I was literally in diapers when Carolina left the Atlantic Coast Conference, but trust me, those of a generation ahead of me never hesitate to remind me, man, if they didn't have the rules they had back then, how good Carolina could have been. And I get it. That'd have been fun to see, man. Been fun to see, but.
The thing with North Carolina too is, I think a lot of people forget, is that the issue with them is just they don't have any really good wins.
Right.
That's the thing, and it's weird to see a North Carolina team with that program and its history just not beat anybody very good.
Well, they're not getting. They gotta. I mean, this is a recruiting thing at Chapel Hill more than anything else. I mean, what are you not doing? I mean, this was a school when I was coming. Listen, they had guys like Pete Chilcutt and Joe Wolf that played in the league for another 15 years, man. And they weren't even that. When I said they weren't that good, they were just so loaded. Forget Jordan and Worthy and Perkins and Kenny Smith and all those guys, man. I mean, they were so deep and talented. And look how many Final Fours Dean Smith made.
I mean, even this year's team, I think the talent is there. They're just not very well coached. Like R.J. Davis, their point guard, was the point guard on the team that went to the national championship game. They spent money to get a couple of the biggest name players in the portal. Ian Jackson was a top 10 recruit coming out of high school. They just haven't been able to put it together.
Maybe they need Will Wade. Ooh.
Hey.
Oh.
If I'm North Carolina, that's what I would have been. I would have had that in the works for weeks. Yeah. For weeks.
But we know Hubert will be back next season. Bill, thank you for the phone call. We'll come back around to some of this, but on the other side of the break, Pro Day down at the Steve and Jerry Spurrier indoor facility. And our buddy Mike Yuva, Elijah was there too, and many others. But Mike will join us, some of his thoughts on what the Gamecocks look like when the postgame show returns. 20 minutes after 4 o'clock here on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay and Elijah with you. Always a pleasure to be joined by our buddy Mike Yuva. Been a little while, but, he's got a lot going on in the world these days. But down here in Columbia covering Pro Day and still working on his stuff with the NFL up north. It's at least nice to be down here where it's warm, right?
Oh, it feels incredible. I'll be back down here in a couple more weeks. Looking forward to being back here in April, and I'm already looking forward to that weather. Just seeing people sitting by the pool today, and not pool weather quite yet in New England.
No, I was just in New York City, and the day we got up there, man, it was a feel like temperature of like I don't know 9 or something. Ooh. It was the wind was howling, my man. So I get it. This could be. I mean, look, you've covered this program a long time now. Are we potentially looking at a record number of Gamecocks that are drafted, not just an opportunity to get into the league, but that get their names called over a 3-day period?
Yeah, I think so for sure. And I think the challenging part is it all comes down to when you're talking about the back end of that draft in the 6th round, 7th round, a team that looks at player X, Y, Z and says, all right, we want that guy instead of bringing someone else in for this reason, that reason, or this reason. Now, I think one thing that benefits South Carolina, and we've seen in the past, is that a lot of these guys are they're not just someone that can make an impact on offense and defense. They can also make a difference on special teams. And I think being able to talk to some of those guys, whether it be Nick Muse, whether it be Jalen Brooks, whether it be a guy like Nate Atkins, who was at Pro Day today to show support for his former teammates.
Go Broncos.
Those are examples. Yes, your Broncos. Those are the examples, though, that come to mind. And I think that could also play a role. And a couple weeks ago, I interviewed ESPN NFL insider Field Yates, and I asked him that very question. He's like, Mike, I really think there's a strong possibility that it could happen and break that mark of 7, which USC has set twice before.
Now, one thing I want to get you to explain to our audience, Yuva, is exactly how much of an athletic freak Nick Emenwari is. He overran the storylines at the Combine. We got to see him today a little bit. But for those who don't understand how much he wowed at the Combine, like put maybe, I guess, some of his measurables into perspective.
Well, put it this way. You look at like a beautiful photo or something, right? And you're like, you know what? There's nothing more that I need to do to this. It is perfect the way that it is. And I bring that example up because I talked with Nick before things wrapped up when he was warming up for positional drills. And I asked him, hey, did you bench today at all? Because sometimes guys, okay, we're back in our own weight room. We're going to bench. We're going to try to do certain things that maybe at the Combine, we didn't feel like it was going to be the best. He's like, I wasn't going to touch anything. He said, I'm just doing positional drills. He's like, I don't think there's anything more that I can show. And he wasn't saying that like in a egotistical way. It's the God's honest truth. And you mentioned some of the measurables. I mean, my goodness, there's nothing more that he could have done in terms of helping his stock than what he did at the Combine. And that's the reason why today you had a general manager there from the Buffalo Bills. You had the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. It's not just sending out a couple of scouts. And that's not to say that they're not looking at other guys, but I think it's evident who they're looking at. And that's Nick Emenwari. And what's going to come down to is whether or not he'll be the first safety or the second safety drafted. And he certainly will have an opportunity to be in that first round. But just the question is when and where will he be going?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things are looking kind of pointing towards him maybe moving into the top 20 of the draft. And as you said, battling for one of those first safeties taken. So there's a lot to like there. Who, in your opinion, has the most, I guess, the biggest opportunity, Mike, to really push forward? Nick notwithstanding there. I mean, are we looking at a guy like a Josh Simon, a Kyle Kennard, who really still has an opportunity to, dare I say, dazzle some teams and make a big shift?
I think one person, and we started to hear more of a buzz at the NFL Combine. He moved very well, but it's Demetrius Knight. And it's not for what he's able to do just on the field. I think a lot of us who had an opportunity to interview him this year or going back to when he came into the spring, this is a guy that when you sit down and you have a conversation with him, you walk out of the room and you feel like you're a better person because you had a chance to talk with him. So I say that because I think teams that have an opportunity to just be around him more. Obviously, he has children. He's married. Like, this is a grounded individual. Like, all he wants to do is truly play football and better his family. And that's not saying that the others don't. But this man, I mean, his life's right there, right? So I think having an opportunity to talk with him, one person I would say to keep an eye on, and I've labeled him as my dark horse this year to be able to make a team, is Dalvin Campbell. And the reason I mention Campbell, there's qualities, there's traits that remind me a lot of what we saw with Jalen Brooks, a guy that is has NFL size, he can move, but he's also a difference maker on special teams, and he certainly proved that as a gunner this year.
Yeah, the gunner thing especially, because, I mean, watching Dalvin run the 40 today was really impressive. I feel like he just absolutely flew down the line, and with all the scouts and GMs there, like, it had to impress one of them, knowing that he also has some really good special teams.
4.43 official time. 4.43.
Lightning, lightning fast. But in terms of, like, who helped themselves out today specifically, because I know a lot of these guys, we mentioned how great Nick was at the Combine, but Rocket had a good Combine. A lot of guys that had a really good week in Indianapolis. Maybe who stood out the most today and just how they look today that you think probably made a lot of headway with a lot of the scouts there?
Well, and I had this conversation with Jack Veltri because we were driving back over. He's been my Uber driver since I've been back in town. So shout out to Jack. Nice. He gets ready to cover baseball tonight. But when I looked at what Juju did on the bench, putting up 27, and for those of you who just need a reminder, that is 225 pounds. That is absurd. And I had to double check to make sure that I was seeing that correctly, because he told me, and I'm just thinking, like, all right, Juju, like, come on, maybe one couple didn't count, and I saw that number, and I'm like, holy cow. And what it reminded me of is what Turbo Miller did last year. And what I mean by that is Turbo put up impressive numbers, the 40 certainly being the best, and that grabbed everyone's attention. Now, one of the conversations I had with Juju today is, I said, have you talked with teams about special teams? And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you look at what's going on in the NFL with the new kickoff rule. So I think that's something that if I was his agent, if I'm just him in general, and I kind of, I don't know what my 2 cents means that to him, but I think that's something that could really help him out, because he is so dangerous in those tight little boxes where he can just, make one cut and he's gone. That new rule, whether we like it or not, as fans of the sport, that has given guys like Juju and guys that have those type of qualities an opportunity now to really make yourself a little bit more valuable in ways where it's not just offense and defense.
Yeah, and I think the NFL likes it too. By all accounts, they've been encouraged by some of the things they've seen from it. Hey, I'm up against it. Can I impose upon you to hold over, because I got a lot more I want to get to? You got a couple minutes?
All right, I'm in no rush.
All right, beautiful. Oh, well, don't tell me that, because then we'll just keep you longer than you, careful what you wish for. All right, good. More with our buddy Mike Uva, Gamecock Central, talking Pro Day when the Postgame Show returns. Waking up feeling a little stiff? Well, it might be time for you to get in and see the pros at the Joint Chiropractic Centers. If you've been bothered by back pain, neck pain, any kind of shoulder pain, joint pain, you never need an appointment. You never have to worry about insurance. You just need to show up, start feeling better. You can be in and out quickly. Don't have to miss lunch. Don't have to miss any major time at work. They're open Monday through Friday, 10 until 7, and Saturdays, 10 until 4. The Joint is also FSA and HSA approved. And now you say, all right, cool. Where are they? I'm glad you asked. Harbison Boulevard, Forest Drive, Roberts Branch off Killian, Northeast Columbia, and Sunset Boulevard in Lexington. They're convenient. They're affordable. They'll help you maintain a healthy body. They'll prevent reoccurring issues. That's what Janet and Bob Keene, the local owners, want you to know. And if you're traveling out of town, once you're in the system, maybe for sports, vacation, work, there's joint centers all across the country. Remember, you don't have to feel bad to feel better at the Joint.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Forum Drive near Marketplace Common Circle, Highway 302 at I-26, Kitty Wake Drive near Emmanuel Church Road, Platte Springs Road at South Lake Drive, Raven Road at US 1 and 2 Notch Road, US 321 near Dixiana Road, and US 378 near US 76 and Divine Street.
Talking Gamecocks Football Pro Day. Our buddy Mike Uva back in town for a few days, and of course still doing all what he does for Gamecock Central all year long, but splitting time here in the Northeast covering the NFL as well. But Mike on the line with us. He was down here today. Let's jump back into this. Let me take you back to Josh Simon for just a second, if you don't mind. Last year, Elijah anointed Josh the easy button for Lenore Sellers, and it bore out. Josh he got open, he caught the ball, he made plays, had some big home run plays too. I think pass catching tight ends with agility and athletic ability have become such a prized commodity in the NFL to where, when I was growing up, Mike, a tight end blocked, and if he caught a couple of balls a year, it's probably because the coach thought it was almost a trick play. That's not where we are anymore. How does Josh fit into the new NFL? What more buzz are you hearing about a kid like that?
Well, I think the big thing is, to your point, and I see it with covering the Patriots and covering the NFL, you have more what we would call hybrid guys. You see it certainly with Travis Kelce, and it feels like that's where that position just continues to go, not just from an NFL standpoint, but it continues to trickle down to college. And it feels like we see even some of these high school guys that are coming out, they're more of a pass catcher than your traditional old school, like a Mark Bavaro, if you will. And Bavaro, of course, was able to go out there and catch as well. But, I bring it up because I think with Josh Simon, with what we saw here this year, he was able to show off what we knew he was capable of doing before he arrived at South Carolina. But because of some of the issues up front 2 seasons ago and trying to keep Spencer Rattler upright, he had to be, more of a blocker. He had to help out, more chipping, and sometimes not just chipping, but coming all the way down to be able to help the offensive line. So I think the tough thing for Josh is this. I think wherever he ends up, he's going to make that team better, and I think he is going to have a very successful NFL career. The tricky thing is this year, when you look at that position, and there's some other positions like a defensive tackle as well, that position is loaded, Jay. It is loaded from talent. So if he continues to drop down and he's a little bit later, I know some Gamecock fans are going to get upset. That's the reason why. It's not because Josh isn't talented. It's just that position's so loaded. And I think regardless of where he ends up, again, I think he's going to be very, very talented.
And one of the guys I was watching for today, because the defensive line group that was out there this morning is just littered with NFL talent. But a lot of mocks during the season that I saw, a couple of them would have TJ Sanders, potentially late first round. How much do you think he's helped himself in this offseason process and where he kind of fits in as a pro?
No question. And like we've been talking about, it feels like with all these guys, especially out in Indy, they all put on clinics with the way that they moved and just the way that they performed in their positional drills. I think with TJ, when I had a chance to talk with Field Yates a couple weeks back, one of the people that he mentioned outside of Nick was TJ. And he was saying this about a month ago. This was before the combine. He's like, I think TJ Sanders will be the second Gamecock pick, just because the way that he plays and just the way that he moves, which obviously was on display in Indy, he is someone that teams really, really like. And I think the other thing, too, when you look at some of those D tackles, because of how quick they move, they have the ability to also be looked at as someone that could play defensive end as well, just because of just their skill set and being able. I mean, you can look at a guy like Tonka Hemingway. Tonka's a guy that could be someone that could go back to edge. I mean, he was a converted edge to D tackle in college. So I think that's another thing that you look at is just the versatility and what they can bring at that next level.
Mike, you mentioned Raheem Sanders a little bit ago too. I mean, this guy, certainly looks the part, and by all accounts, maybe didn't get all the way back to that season at Arkansas a couple of years ago, but certainly, injury free, looked a whole lot better. Where do you see a guy like that fitting into today's NFL?
Well, I mean, as we saw this past year, there was a lot of NFL teams that decided to run the football more than what we have seen, at least in recent years. So you never know if it continues to go in that trend, which I don't look at last season in the NFL and say, all right, it's going to go back to being a run, a running league. And obviously I say that with, air quotes, because we know at the end of the day, it's always going to be a pass-happy league. But I think the challenging part for a guy like Rocket is, let's just call it for what it is. The guy has gone through a lot of injuries. And when you're talking about the running back position, a lot of those guys, unfortunately, that shelf life is not that long. So I think with Rocket, the challenge that he'll be going up against is just the fact that he's playing the position where a lot of these guys, once they get to that second contract, they're usually not on the same team. Obviously, you can find outliers throughout the league, because I'm sure there's some people that are thinking, oh, about this guy, about that guy. Yeah, it happens. But more times than not, it feels like these guys are somewhere else for that second contract. I think for Rocket, if he does fall, whether it be 5th round, 6th round, it's because of the injury concern. But when he's healthy, and as we saw at South Carolina, and as we saw at Arkansas, he runs the ball hard. He's a difference maker even as a pass catcher too. And I think those two things, and when you think about some of the running backs that South Carolina have been able to produce over the last couple of years, there's a common theme. Right, you look at what Rico Dowdle's been able to do in the NFL these last 2 years in particular. These guys run the ball hard. They're big body guys, and I think that if you can do those two things, run the ball hard, and you're a big guy, they'll find a place for you in the NFL.
And one guy, too, that made this secondary so fun to watch, to me, was O'Donnell Fortune, and seeing his progression over the last couple of years, and to being a guy that you could rely on to lock down the other team's best receiver. Not talked about as much as maybe, your Kyle Kennards and Nick Emmett-Warries and TJ Sanders, but where do you think he kind of falls in the draft, and maybe how he can project as a guy that can maybe help an NFL secondary right away?
So what's funny is the more I watch O'Donnell Fortune from the end of the year and through this process of getting ready for the combine and then pro day, it reminds me a lot of what we saw a year ago with Marcellus Dial. Because Marcellus Dial, if people remember, he was really able to help raise his draft stock, not just at the combine, but what he did in the East-West game that year. What did OD do in the East-West game? Well, he was only the defensive MVP. So he's only helped himself over these last couple of weeks. And I think he's a guy that I could see being in more that 5th round, which is ironic because that's exactly where Dial ended up being last year. That's where I see OD going. I could certainly see him, maybe being on a little bit of a higher end if a team just falls in love with that length because of his arms, because he has makeup speed with that. I mean, that's the beauty. We're seeing it more and more in the NFL with some of these taller corners. They like that because if they do get beat, well, he's got a long reach. Guess what? He can make up for it in comparison to a guy that's maybe not as lanky.
Last thing for you here. Got about a minute left. Now that they've made the playoffs again, how strongly do you feel about my Broncos going 17-0 next year?
Well, I want to see Nate Atkins do well, so I'll say that. But
it's not really an answer, Mike. That's not really.
Well, well, it's funny because I'm going to be going back to Providence and Rick Pitino and all the teams that are coming through Providence. As Rick Pitino once said about the Celtics, Larry Bird is not coming through those doors, man. So I don't think Don Elway's coming through that door, Jay. I'm sorry. Terrell Davis is not coming through that door. And if they do, they're going to be gray and old.
Yeah, you got to do it right, though, man. And you got the accent for it, even though you're from Boston and he's from the city. But Larry Bird's not walking through that door. So, yeah, John Elway's not
He's
walking through that door.
Fan.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yep. No, that was better.
Hey, a kid can dream. A kid can dream. Hey, appreciate you, man. Good to catch up. We'll do it again real soon. Safe travels back up, and always appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
That's our buddy Mike Uva. Catch his work at GamecockCentral.com, covering Carolina football. Mike_Uva to follow along on Twitter. Mel Kiper has put out his latest mock. Like, it's fresh off the presses. Where does he have Nick Emenwari? I'll tell you when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. Halftime. Oh, man.
Did it again.
Let's start over.
Wow.
Welcome back in. Postgame Show.
I want to start upgrading these from false starts to personal
When's the
fouls.
last time I said halftime show?
It's been at least 2 weeks.
No, it's been longer than that.
It's been like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Sorry.
I'm not mad.
That's all I can say.
I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that's been a theme of the week.
It is.
I bet Justin's disappointed in me too, but maybe he'll have something else to take my mind off of it. Justin, how you doing, buddy? Welcome in.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
Hey, guys. I got so I told out the EIT because listen, the EIT was not good like it was today. You know, and, listen, I guess they saw that SEC got 14 teams in there, and that's amazing. And if you're Southern SU, you want to be in that conversation next year. You got to be, right? And also look at the women too. They had a lot of trade teams too. I mean, this is serious, guys. This is SC. They like to play the big tone, not like the EIT.
No, that's a good point, man. Yeah, that's a good point, Justin. Thanks. And again, I question too, like rhetorically, I guess, but you know how much pressure is on the 24 teams of the Southeastern Conference, if you will, that made the NCAA tournaments. You know, I mean, I was telling Elijah I forgot to bring my bracket. I filled my bracket out, and I promise you I'm not going to change anything. But I think, what did I tell you? I had 5 SEC schools. I think
you had 4.
4 making,
you had 4.
Making the Sweet
5.
16.
Yeah.
And I've got only 1 SEC school making the Final Four, and that was Tennessee. I got Auburn losing early to Michigan. I think I have Bama beating Wisconsin to get to the Elite 8, but then Bama loses to Duke. Is that right?
That would be up.
Yeah. I've got Duke winning the whole thing.
Same.
And it's not that I have, look, a lack of confidence. I just, and I told Elijah, the way I make my bracket out, I kind of go rapid fire. I don't sit there and go, or like go looking up stats. You know, I've seen the basketball I've seen. And everything else I've gleaned from Elijah's knowledge, which is why it's been a thrill to work with Elijah. Elijah's like me back when I was in my 20s and I did nothing but sit around watching college basketball all the time. Like, we'd watch the midnight or the 11 p.m. Eastern tip for the West Coast Conference. But
those are the best.
I mean, my buddies and I, and then we watch Letterman, and then we'd finally go to bed. Anyway. But I just didn't like a lot of the matchups, and then a couple of them were upsets. I know Florida's playing tremendous basketball, but I had Florida losing to who did I have Florida losing to? I don't have a bracket in front of me, so I
did you have them losing to Maryland?
Yes,
the Terps, the Crab Five.
Yes, and again, I like Tennessee to make the 4, but it's not going to. But here's the thing, and we looked it up too. It was 2 there. All of the teams can't make, the men anyway, all of the men's teams cannot make the Sweet 16 because there'd be at least 2.
Yeah, Florida and Oklahoma have a chance to play in the second round.
Yeah, and I think Kentucky could have one with Texas, potentially.
Yes.
And
I think that's it.
Was Vanderbilt, they have one where they could maybe play somebody? Or am I,
Alabama. Yeah, Vanderbilt can play Alabama.
Yeah.
They beat St. Mary's, and Alabama takes care of Bobby Moe.
All of them can't make it. But yeah, Justin, you're right about it. Coming back to the Gamecocks portion of it all. Look, I get why. Again, to come back to yesterday's topic, the Gamecock men and LSU too. Let's throw them in the boat. Turning down the NIT, I get it, and I'm not sitting here going, I can't believe it. I just, like I say, if you get the opportunity, my stance was if you get the opportunity, you may as well take it. They didn't see it that way, and that's fine. That's fine. There are valid reasons for it, and there may be some that there a little more hidden reasons for it. But a bunch of schools have turned the NIT down, and that to me is somewhat problematic, and dare I also say emblematic of where we are right now, which is another reason, Elijah, while I don't advocate for it, that maybe you expand the NCAA tournament to get some more of these teams that are like, I don't want to go to the NIT. Now, Carolina and LSU would not have been in an expanded NCAA tournament, so they're not really the teams I'm talking about. But Anyway, Justin, thanks for the phone call. And again, 14 men, 10 women's teams of the 16 in the NCAAs. So, and 2 of them are ones on each side.
Yeah.
That's pretty heady stuff, man. There's no 2-seed women's teams, but LSU's a 3.
Yep, LSU's a 3.
Tennessee's a 5. Kentucky's a 4. They're hosting, right?
Yeah, Kentucky's dangerous.
Yeah. Since I said I'd do it in this one, let me real fast here, and we'll probably have some more on this a little bit later on, but Mel Kiper's latest mock draft does have Nick Emenwari as the first safety taken and going number 18 to the Seahawks. So Nick in the post-free agency, post-combine mock from Mel into the top 20, which, again, I think last mock draft he was at like 26, 27, so he's
rising,
making his way up. Headlines of the day coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell with a few accidents to get to you. They're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with an accident that's got 3 lanes blocked on I-20 westbound before Broad River Road near exit 65. Some other traffic backups as a result of accidents are on Highway 302 at I-26, I-20 westbound at US 378 at exit 61, 2 on 26 westbound, 1 at Augusta Road near exit 111, the other at Sunset Boulevard near exit 110. Also one on Kitty Wake Drive near Manual Church Road, Platte Springs Road at South Lake Drive, St. Andrews Road at Harbison Boulevard and Emory Lane, and lastly, one on US 321 near Dixiana Road.
It is 5 o'clock news time on this Tuesday. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. Coming up in about an hour and 15 minutes, get you over to Gamecock Baseball. South Carolina here in Columbia, taking on Chad Holbrook's Charleston Cougars. That'll be at Segra Park, 6:30 first pitch. Tonight's pitching matchup is Jarvis Evans for the Gamecocks, the junior lefty. Big kid, too, 6'4", 3-0 with a 3.63. 17 in the third innings pitch, 19 strikeouts, just 3 walks. He's doing very well. Daniel Brooks will go for Charleston. The junior righty is 2-1 with a 5.12 ERA, 19 in the third, 15 strikeouts, and 6 walks. Yesterday, Elijah and I had a chance, as we do every Monday, to speak with Coach Maneri, and no doubt in his mind that Jarvis Evans is his midweek guy.
Oh, yes. Jarvis will get the start tomorrow. But I did mention, that, we used a lot of guys out of our bullpen. So guys that haven't pitched much are going to have to step up. I don't expect Jarvis to go 9 innings. So we're going to have some guys that step up and do the job for us. Charleston had their game rained out yesterday. So we'll see their third starter, and they're going to have a rested bullpen. So we're going to have some things to overcome tomorrow night and really have to play a great ball game.
Charleston won 2-1 and 7-3 against Dartmouth this weekend, as Coach said before they had their Sunday game get rained out. Listen, Elijah, I'm not going to make too much of a Tuesday night game, no matter who the opponent is, and everybody knows what Chad Holbrook means to Gamecock baseball. More than anything, South Carolina just needs to get the bad taste from Sunday out of their mouth. So whoever you're playing, you can be playing the Braves today. You better win the game. You need to win the game. Because, again, Sunday, as you and I mentioned earlier, and with David Cloninger when he joined us, tell me how you lost. You looked bad in losing, and you need to get that flushed. And the only way to really go do it is to win this game.
Yeah. And the thing that they've done so well, at least so far this season, is at least not lose the games you're supposed to win.
Right.
Right. I mean, the 2 big series you've had so far between Clemson and Oklahoma, probably not favored to win either of those.
Right.
Against ranked teams, right?
Right.
Thankfully, at least against Oklahoma, you went one of 3, and you're able to steal 1. But in all of those other non-Clemson and Oklahoma games, you've taken care of business. Mm-hmm. Even if it hadn't been pretty at times, you've taken care of business, and you've still yet to, knock on wood, drop a midweek game. And at least when we're trying to build resumes to get into the baseball tournament at the end of the season, that looks good if you just don't have any bad losses, because you're going to there's a chance, the way this team has played against those 2 big opponents so far this year, there's a chance you can get beat up a lot in SEC play. Now, sure, you're definitely have to pick up that record in your conference, but if anything, you're not putting any bad losses on your body at work.
Yeah. 6:30 tonight, first pitch over at Segra Park. Again, beautiful ballpark for those of you. Again, most of you by now have probably been at least once.
It's a lovely experience.
But if you haven't, head on over there. And if you can't make it, Derek and Coach Lake on the call, 6:15. We'll have it for you here in Columbia, of course, and across the network at 6:15. Speaking of baseball, if I told you that yesterday was officially opening day, would you believe me?
How'd my Reds do?
They didn't play.
Oh, so it's not opening day.
Braves didn't play.
Huh.
The Yankees didn't play. Mets didn't play. Phillies didn't play. Cubs didn't play. White Sox didn't play.
The White Sox are probably glad they didn't play.
Giants didn't play. A's didn't play. Diamondbacks didn't play. Rangers didn't play. Astros didn't play. Marlins didn't play. Rays didn't play.
What about the Rockies?
Rockies didn't play.
Dang.
Twins didn't play.
Wow.
Brewers didn't play. Tigers didn't play.
Bears? Oh, my.
No, it was opening day, though, officially in Tokyo. Actually, I lied. The Cubs did play. Sorry. Did I say the Cubs didn't play?
Yeah, I think you
I got so caught up in my bit. No, yesterday, if you didn't hear, it was the Cubs. The Dodgers beat the Cubs 4-1 in the Tokyo Dome in a real game. That's right, kids.
It counts.
They take them out of Arizona, fly them over to Japan. They play 2 real games. They're playing another one. I don't know when it starts because it's like a 14-hour time difference, so I have no idea. Probably about now. No, that's in the morning. I don't know what time. Hell, I don't know. Regardless, the Dodgers 4, the Cubs 1. Shohei Ohtani had a couple of hits and even said post-game, it's been a while since I felt this nervous play a game. Took me 4 or 5 innings. Listen, I am thrilled that Shohei Ohtani is maybe the biggest star in the game. I love seeing the game grow internationally in the same way that I do the NBA. I don't want to sound too jingoistic here or anything like that. I don't even mind playing real baseball games in Japan, or if they want to go play in Mexico or Cuba or wherever, man. But it's not opening day. You still got 2 weeks of spring training. They're going to come back and go back to spring training.
Feels weird.
If you want to do something like this, that's fine. I told you, listen, the West Coast teams, especially, at least of the 6 West Coast teams, 4 of them are immensely popular in Japan. And I suppose the Angels were to some degree while Shohei was there. Mm-hmm. Now that he's gone, probably not so much. But, the Padres, the Dodgers, the Giants, and the Mariners have big followings in Japan because they've all had Japanese stars. Certainly Seattle had maybe the biggest, until now. But I still say I'm going to put Ichiro above Shohei, if only because Ichiro's made himself a Hall of Famer. Yu Darvish is down in San Diego. Again, Shohei's doing what he's doing in L.A., whether it's for the Dodgers or the Angels. Giants have had players, and again, the Japanese communities in those cities are also immense. Have those 4 teams go to Japan this week and play what amounts to a spring training mini tournament, right? And really showcase all of them and give the kids the chance to see their Japanese heroes and wear the hats and get some autographs and whoever. But it's not opening day, man. And yet, we're told it's opening day. I mean, in the first sentence of this thing, after the Los Angeles Dodgers opening day in capital letters, opening day 4-1 win over the Cubs in the Tokyo Dome, Ohtani made a surprising admission, and it was opening day.
It was the season opener, if we want to play semantics.
Right.
It was your season opener, but opening day is a little different because the entire league.
2 weeks, ahead of time. Let me go just look. Like when the Braves start the regular season. The Braves start the regular season. That's a spring schedule, of course. Now I got to go back and do this the right way. March 27th in San Diego. So next week.
Also, March opening days. I
think they're trying to build in some. Well, they got more playoffs now, so they got to start earlier. Anyway, I don't want to rant too much about it. Well, maybe I do. And like I say, I'm not sitting here going, baseball's an American sport for Americans. No, I'm not doing that at all. We got a team in Canada. We used to have 2 teams in Canada. We might have a team in Canada again at some point. And it's an incredibly international sport when you consider the Caribbean players. And again, now I welcome the influx of the Japanese league is good, and I'm glad that these guys are coming over and becoming superstars. I love it. I'm glad for it. I keep growing the game because there's part of me as a baseball guy who feels like the game is dying a slow death, especially when you look at the average age of the fan relative to basketball, football, soccer. And I'm glad soccer's growing but it almost feels like soon enough here, if baseball's not careful, like soccer might overtake it. It's still going to be a little while, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm here more for everybody sharing a piece of the pie. But this is dumb. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. This I do not like. Again, you want to play some official games over there? Cool. But if you're going to do it in the spring, have something like we had with Liverpool and Manchester United coming to town. Make it a big deal, but still an exhibition.
Right. The semantics of having like one series played and then not playing another one for 2 weeks.
Right.
And having opening day happen with one or two teams playing a 3-game series.
Yeah. And it's a long way over there and a long way back for 2 games.
Yeah, 2 games. Yeah, they're not playing 3. They're just playing 2.
Yeah, I think they're just playing. Yeah. So anyway, all right. There
silly.
You go. All right.
Young Kim would not stand for this. Neither would Chan Ho Park.
Rant over for now. Basketball starts tonight with the first 4 in Dayton. And if I can get this to cooperate with me, here we go. St. Francis and Alabama State, 2 16 seeds, will tip at 6:40.
Frankie the Friar.
From the UD Arena. Yeah, you said he scares kids. Alabama State is a 3.5-point favorite. Then tonight, after that one, North Carolina and San Diego State. The Tar Heels 4.5-point favorites at the UD Arena. Who you got?
Hit a buzzer beater against Florida Atlantic, and then UConn beat the hell out of Miami. For 40 minutes.
Okay. Because Chapel Hill was in the Final Four how many years ago? 2?
The year before that.
Okay.
So the 21-22 season.
They all run together for me, man. Sorry. I'm trying.
You're doing your best.
Yeah, well, am I? We'll see. And finally, if you didn't see this story late yesterday, the NCAA has agreed to permanently drop a rule that prohibits high school athletes, or really now transfer athletes too, this primarily I guess applies to high school kids, prohibits athletes from negotiating the terms of NIL payments until after they enroll. So in other words, during the recruiting process, a school can use an NIL pitch to help entice a young man or young lady to come to their school. Says Dan Murphy of ESPN, quote, "The change is one of the terms of a settlement announced Monday between the NCAA and a group of state attorneys general who sued last year, claiming that the restriction on NIL negotiations violated federal antitrust law. The settlement still needs to be approved by the judge in the case, marks another step forward as the college sports industry prepares to embrace a more professional business model in the months ahead." This is not associated with the House settlement that is being heard by Judge Wilkin out in California. This was a separate deal, but yet another settlement. And I'm okay with this. I again, there's part of me. One of the things I said to you when we were having our show meeting this morning, I think you're going to see ultimately a sense of market correction here because some kids, especially high school kids, it might be a little different for portal athletes, but there's still going to be a hit rate that's going to be interesting to watch. But the hit rate out of high school into college is not great. It's not terrible either, but and plenty of kids don't pan out, and yet you're going to go. I'm looking at like a Jaden Rashada type kid. Like, I don't think you're very good, man. I think if
there's a reason he's bounced around already.
Yeah, like I don't think you're very good, and yet somebody said you should make $12 or $13 million. Like what are we talking about here? So sure, big state go sign hotshot 5-star, but you better hope he makes it. And if you're now with NIL being separate from the rev share, if you're the business owner looking to help your school sign big-time 5-star, you better hope big-time 5-star pans out, man.
The pressure to become big-time 5-star is heightened a little bit.
So I don't have a problem with this, mainly because I would say why not? If we're not going to have for the NFL especially, and let's face it, this is primarily, football players. If you're not going to sign these kids out of high school, well, baseball players can go sign $5 million deals out of high school. Hockey players can go sign $5 million deals out of high school. Soccer players, tennis players, golfers, they can all go ahead and get paid right away. So, sure, okay. But you better live up to the hype, because if you don't, then what? You don't have to give it back necessarily.
Nor should you.
But, you get that big old bust stamped across your photo from moving forward.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of those kids already have bust on their photo. If you go back and look at the 24/7, 5-star pages. But now they're no longer busts for free. So if you're going to be a bust, profit on
Might as well
doing
get
so.
paid.
Yeah, might as well.
That's our integrated media headlines of the day. More on Gamecock Pro Day and a few thoughts on what's going on tonight in baseball. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Welcome back in. Postgame show rolling on here. Drive around the SEC coming up in just a bit. Continue to remind you about all the teams that are playing in the NCAA tournament, which again starts tonight officially with the play-in games in Dayton. 2 of them. There's 2 more tomorrow, but we got 2 of them tonight. And the women's play-in games start tomorrow, right? Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Coach Maneri has put out his lineup for tonight. Nathan Hall will lead off. Evan Stone hitting second and left. Nathan, of course, in center. Ethan Petrie at first base tonight, hitting third. KJ Scobie cleaning up third base. Jace Wodo will DH tonight. Dalton Mayshore will be in right field. Gavin Braylon behind the plate tonight. Interesting. Hadn't played in a couple of weeks. Jordan Carrion at second, hitting eighth. Henry Kazmar, shortstop, hitting ninth. Jarvis Evans on the hill. Speaking of Scobie, can we have cut 15, please, sir? Coach Maneri talked with us yesterday about his young freshman and what he's seen so far from him.
Well, yeah, as everybody knows, I've been high on KJ Scobie from the day he walked onto this campus, and primarily because he's just a great third baseman defensively. He's as good a third baseman as I've had in my 40 years of coaching, okay? And he carries himself like a ball player. And in the fall, he showed glimpses as a hitter of being able to do some special things. And then, he got off to a little bit of a slow start this spring and had some trouble with certain kinds of pitches and got pull happy a little bit. And, he's making the adjustment to Division I baseball. But I just thought he's been getting better and better with each passing day. And this weekend he showed the kind of hitter he's capable of being. Now I'm hitting him in the 4-hole, so what do? You got a freshman that's a great third baseman that's carries himself like a ball player. Now he's hitting 4-hole for a Division I SEC school. So what does that tell you about his future? He's going to have a terrific career here at South Carolina, and I think our fans are going to be really enjoying watching him play for the next couple of years and this year, of course.
And again, Carolina just really needs to get the bad taste of Sunday out of their mouth. Best way to do it, go win the next one. Again, Jarvis Evans on the hill. I'll give you the pitching matchups one more time for those of you who may have just gotten in the car or anything after work. Jarvis Evans for the Gamecocks, junior lefty, 3-0, 3.63, 17 and a third, 19 strikeouts, 3 walks. Daniel Brooks, junior righty for Charleston, 2-1 with a 5.12. 19 and a third, 15 strikeouts, 6 walks. And again, 6:15 radio airtime, 6:30 first pitch at Segra Park. Not down at the Ray. Just making sure everybody knows that. It's in Columbia, just not at the Ray.
If you go to the Ray, you'll find that it is very empty.
There might be somebody there that points you in the direction of Segra Park, and it'll take you about 10 minutes to get there. So not so bad.
No. It's at least in the same town.
It is. Yep. Not the same zip code.
Nope.
I don't think.
I don't think so either. Varies.
No, it's not. I'll tell you why it's not. Because Carolina technically has their own zip code. So
Interesting.
I'm just going to use it like that.
I feel like most universities do.
I think that it's easier that way. Yeah. Football-wise, again, Mel Kiper put out his latest mock draft. If you haven't seen this, he's got Nick Emenwari as the top safety taken. And here's what he says. Emenwari reminds me of Kyle Hamilton, whom Seattle coach Mike McDonald worked with previously as the Ravens defensive coordinator. We witnessed Emenwari's speed, 4.38 40, and explosiveness, 43-inch vertical, at the combine, and we saw his ball hawking traits, 4 picks, last season. Emenwari would help bolster an already strong secondary in Seattle. I think the question now, again, with no safeties taken before him, I'm double-checking to make sure I didn't miss that, Elijah. I don't think I did I? Got a couple of linebackers ahead of him.
First safety.
Yeah.
Malachi Starks isn't taken until 27.
Yeah, they've almost switched places,
season.
right?
Yeah, the consensus before Combine was that Starks was safety 1, Emenwari 2. But since the Combine, I feel like that's kind of been the feeling is that that's flipped.
And that's, part, I think, of what people can see in an individual drill at a Combine, coupled with the tape. And the tape is very good on Nick Emenwari. If that's all you saw, let's face it, before the Combine, he was still picked as a first-rounder by most people. Just maybe at the bottom of the draft or the bottom of the round. But in this sense, he's made a name for himself. And Seattle will be a good landing spot. Listen, that division,
Winnable.
it's winnable, man. You know?
They were tied for it.
Yeah.
Lost the tiebreaker to the Rams, which is why they didn't make the playoffs.
And you've made some moves. I mean, Mel does say in here that Kelvin Banks from Texas, big O lineman, could go there. And he also says he could see Seattle looking for a DK Metcalf replacement in this slot too. But, for now has Nick where he has him. So interesting stuff there. And earlier today, too, Carolina Pro Day. Listen, how there was a lot of NFL folk over there. I know, Elijah, you were out there for a bit. Like I said, I'm kind of lamenting the fact this is the first pro day I've missed in about 20 years. But, this could be – I think they've had 7 drafted twice at South Carolina. And, are we looking at a potential for a record haul of Carolina draft picks this year? But, there's high interest in what Shane is building in terms of development, and I think there's a lot of no. But when you can get one big time guy, it can have such a benefit for that so-called kind of trickle down effect.
Oh yeah, well, more eyes are on some of the other guys too that wouldn't normally be there if Nick Evanworry didn't have a superhuman, scouting combine. Yeah, a lot of people probably were interested in Demetrius Knight, and maybe they're more so now because they went there to see Evanworry and they saw Knight and be like, wow, this guy can really get after it too, or insert any other Gamecock player here. I think that helps everybody else greatly. But they were not just scouts; they were GMs.
Right.
I mean, Dan Morgan from the Panthers was there, which of course easy drive, but GM from Buffalo was there. That's not an easy drive.
Well, there's all of a sudden a lot of Gamecocks in Charlotte. It could be somewhat coincidental. I do appreciate that, but it's not going to be lost on anybody to say, well, if we can get a few more, I mean, it is good business.
There's a good relationship there.
Yeah.
You can tell there's a solid relationship there.
Yeah. And speaking of D Knight, who's from up that way, we talked to Mike Yuva earlier today, full interview with Mike, who joined us for a couple of segments on the YouTube channel and wherever else you find our podcasting. But, he mentioned something that I think is a neat intangible, and that's that, Demetrius is a married father. That doesn't discount anybody else being a bachelor.
Right.
Okay. But an NFL team, may have an appreciation for that. You can always worry about, say, hey, is this guy going to be hitting the club all the time, or is this guy going to go play golf all the time? Is this guy just going to,
is this guy James Harden?
Yeah, does he just want to go surfing? Whatever, depending on at least where you play. If you play like in L.A. or L.A. But
not Kansas City.
They might have a surf park, but no, I think that's something to look at and think about. And we ask him about Josh Simon, who's become, I think, a really popular figure around here. But Josh fits the mold. And Carolina had one years ago, and a guy like Jared Cook. And they've had a few others. Saunders had his opportunities for a bit, and Cunningham and Busta Anderson. Carolina's had some good pass catching tight ends. Nate's doing his thing right now for the Broncos. I hope it continues to go, but I feel like Josh Simon's the kind of guy who, once he can get into the system, really could, I think, be a bigger surprise for some NFL teams. Because I think he was kind of, I don't want to say a surprise here. But did we expect him to be the leading pass catcher?
Or be the most relied upon pass catcher?
I don't know that we did, man.
No? Or to see exactly how well he played the role of just being the offense's easy button?
Yeah.
Because it slid right into that spot, man.
It
seemed really natural.
You have one of those? Oh, we have one of those at our house.
The easy button?
The easy button.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was easy.
I mean, hey, for a while, Staples made a lot of those, and I'm surprised that they didn't just start selling those exclusively and stop the whole office supply.
You know what else I have that's the same shape and the same idea, but a different thing, is George Costanza's dad saying, "Serenity now." I have one of those.
Of course you do. Well, that does not surprise me.
Thank you. I do what I can. Drive around the SEC is next. Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union ready to help you out with any and all of your banking needs, including home equity lines of credit. You love your house, you love your neighborhood, but maybe time to get a few things updated. Take advantage, especially in this rate environment, of some fantastic opportunities from Palmetto Citizens. And when you work with Palmetto Citizens, you're going to be offered a great low rate. You're going to pay lower closing costs. You're going to pay lower application fees than the big banks, because that's what they do at Palmetto Citizens. They return earnings to members in the form of lower rates and fewer fees. And when you unlock your home's equity, you can access your line of credit over a 10-year draw period. So do the kitchen now, the bathroom later. Hey, maybe there's a pool in the future. Whatever it is, take advantage. You've earned it, right? Apply today at palmettocitizens.org or stop in and see their great pros at any of their 14 convenient Midlands locations. Palmetto Citizens, achieve your potential.
From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you, they're causing some issues on the roadways, starting with an accident that's got the right lane completely blocked on I-20 westbound before Broad River Road near exit 65. Also have one on Corley Mill Road at River Chase Way, I-20 westbound at US 378 near exit 61, two on 26 West, one after Augusta Road near exit 111, the other at Sunset Boulevard, exit 110. We also have one at Leapart Road near Mineral Springs Road and on St. Andrews Road at Harbison Boulevard and Emery Lane.
It is Drive Around the SEC time here on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay and Elijah with you. Before we do anything else, though, we are going to give you an opportunity right now to enter into our bracket challenge. Here's what you're going to do. We have 4 slots currently available. Is that right?
Oh, we have. Let me pull the email.
Well, we're doing right now. How many are we doing right now?
Since we were supposed to do this earlier in the show, I say we empty the clip and we do all of them. So we have six spots available. This is why you don't procrastinate, kids. This is a life lesson.
So here's what you're going to do.
Teaching life lessons on this program. Do not procrastinate, because then you have to jam a bunch of stuff in.
Here's what you're going to do. The first 6 texts that we get. Now, you need to text the words bracket challenge and then include, like, your name and phone number and email.
Phone number will be there. Yeah. Include your email as well.
Okay, yeah. So text the words bracket challenge and then your name, phone number, and email. All right? And then the first 6 of them that we get, we're going to assign you the following schools in order.
Yes. Texter number 1 will get Gonzaga.
Okay.
2 will get Georgia. 3 will get Clemson, which fun there if you're a Gamecock fan. 4, McNeese State, the Fighting Will Wades. 5, Purdue. And 6, High Point.
Okay.
Which could be a lot of fun.
And this is text only. I see the phone lines hitting out here. So text the words bracket challenge, and the first 6 of you that do so will get those schools that Elijah just named in order.
If you misspell bracket challenge, I might not accept it.
Well, do your best to do it. I don't know.
Probably do it anyway.
I don't know how to spell it, so just phonetically spell it. I don't care. It's not my problem.
Sound it out.
And to whomever is responsible for this ultimately, and we did it late, as far as you know, I apologize and I'm sorry. But it's probably you, isn't it?
What?
That's responsible for some of this.
Probably,
not for being late, but for actually putting this together later.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if I just caused you more work?
No. I mean, I got it pulled up right here.
Okay, good.
This ain't nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. So, again, text. By the way, 803-404-6100.
Oh, by the way, this page is moving. Yeah, they knew the number.
Oh, they knew. Okay, good. Yeah. Yay. All right. In the meantime, now, do you want me to ask you this question while you're doing 2 things at once?
Absolutely. I'm great.
Okay. So, there are 14 schools on the men's side. We'll talk more about the women's side tomorrow when their tournament begins, which officially begins tomorrow. There's 14 schools from the Southeastern Conference going to the NCAA tournament. And I do think there is a lot of pressure on the tournament or on the conference collectively to have these schools advance. Now, again, there could be 3 potential SEC versus SEC second-round matchups. So all of the schools cannot make the Sweet 16. But that said, Elijah Campbell, which SEC school of the 14 has the most pressure on them individually? And to kind of flip that coin, which SEC school is playing with the largest amount of house money? And let's start with the house money one first.
Okay. Yeah, the house money one is pretty interesting. And it's one of those, like, you could say a team like Vanderbilt probably is playing with house money. Like, it's a winnable game against St. Mary's. But if you lose, it's disappointing because you went 1 and done in the SEC tournament, and then you lost in the NCAA tournament. But you got back. And that's a school that was just so dying to get back in a program that felt dead under Jerry Stackhouse. You no longer feel dead. And you have a coach that's a really good portal recruiter, a really good X's and O's coach. You're set up for a long time. And a couple of really young players on there, like Tyler Tanner is a freshman point guard, but one of the best assist-turnover ratios in the SEC. Tyler Nickel, I think, still has another year of eligibility. A lot of those guys can come back next year, right? The pressure for Vanderbilt will probably be next year. So I think they're playing with a little bit of house money right now.
Okay. I don't disagree with you, and I won't give as long an answer here. I think the answer to the house money one is Georgia.
Ooh, also a good one.
Because I just don't think Georgia even expected to be there because they never expect to be there. And I don't mean that as a slam. I think like the Gamecocks, they have about the same number of overall tournament appearances, which is not that many. And Georgia gets Gonzaga. Like Mike White can say, guys, not only are we in, we get to play, one of the newer blue bloods of the sport. The Zags are having a down year as an 8 seed. I mean, they beat St. Mary's in their conference tournament, yet St. Mary's is a higher seed. St. Mary's is technically the better team this year. But I liked it that Mike White just kind of, and Georgia's just kind of quietly like, oh, hey, Georgia? Really?
They're dangerous in this thing, too.
Yeah. So
that's a team that blocks a lot of shots, that protects the paint really well.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to beat Georgia in the NCAA tournament, you got to be able to make it rain from 3.
Yeah. But I like Georgia there. All right. And then team with the most pressure on them.
Yeah, that would be that was the easier one for me because that's Auburn.
Yeah.
They're so old.
Yeah.
They might get Chad Baker-Mazara back next year. They're going to have to go through the NCAA for that. Broom's out of eligibility. A lot of these guys are out of eligibility. This is a team that started the season 27-2 and was so far ahead of the rest of the field that they basically had the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament locked in before the month of March.
Yeah.
It was locked in.
Yeah.
They lost 3 of the last 4, still got it. It was absolutely locked in because that resume was loaded. And if you start the year like that and you just completely pee on yourself down the stretch, that's going to, people will remember that. And it's a shame because this was a great team.
Yeah.
They won the best conference, one of the greatest, most loaded collection of schools in a league in the history of college basketball, and won it running away, and then just completely fell over themselves in tournament time. That, especially if they fall in the second round, because the second round matchup's not going to be easy. I think Louisville takes care of Creighton, but if they play Louisville. They're playing Louisville in Lexington. That could be a crowd road game for them, theoretically. And that's a team that went 18-2 in its league and pushed Duke to the brink, even though Duke didn't have, I know Duke didn't have, Cooper Flagg, but that Duke team is still loaded. I mean, that would be a really harsh way for them to leave the season. Tennessee's a close second because of all the old guys they have on that roster. And with Rick Barnes kind of reaching the twilight of his career too, there's that stigma of he's only been to one Final Four, and the University of Tennessee has never been to a Final Four. And at this point, if you're Tennessee, if you can't make it this year, when the hell are you going to actually?
Yeah, I think I think that second part is when are you going to? I certainly agree. I agree with both of those. I push back here. I think Tennessee is the second most pressurized team, if you will. I don't know what that gap looks like here as we figuratively discuss that, though. If only because of what Auburn didn't do last season. And it's not about Yale. It's that last year you and I were doing this show down at Twin Peaks, which we'll be doing again this week, by the way. I love their hospitality. Yale beat them. Auburn just decided, And remember late, they got that there was a little fisticuffs and whatnot. I mean, Auburn at that point was rattled. Mm-hmm. Yale just got in their head, man, and I think that shook them. So I'm with you. I don't think there's any doubt that the team with the most pressure is Auburn. For what it's worth, now you mentioned Louisville. That Louisville Creighton game is an 8-9 game. The Cardinals the 8, Blue Jays the 9.
What a great first game.
I know, right?
Thursday. Oh, that's a gift.
I've got Creighton winning that one on my bracket. I've got Auburn beating Creighton, but then I have Auburn losing to Michigan.
I'm losing to Michigan State, so we both have them losing to schools that are in the mitten.
Yeah, so I think Auburn maybe has dipped in form just a little bit here, as you mentioned, in the last couple of weeks. Still more than enough resume-wise to be the number 1 overall. But there's a lot on Brew. And look, I think with the portal, he and Rick both could go in and rather quickly rebuild, refill the coffers, whatever terminology you want to use. But he's done such a good job with so many of these guys. Like this, to me, for both, I think you make a good point, man. I think for both Auburn and UT, this is sort of a line drawn, and that next year begins something else, especially in today's college basketball world, where a lot of it can be year to year. We had a great tweet yesterday from somebody about the Gamecocks, and it's all just rent a player every year, or rent a roster kind of a thing. And I in some ways, yeah, I get what you're saying there. But for Auburn and Tennessee, they've built a lot of what they are right now, and they might. I got Tennessee in the Final Four, but I don't have Auburn making it. But we shall see. That's our drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy. We'll wrap it up when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. Final few minutes of the program here on a Tuesday. Again, coming up in about 25 minutes, Gamecock Baseball. Derek Scott, Stuart Lake on the call from Segra Park, not the Ray. In Columbia, not the Ray. Chad Holbrook, again, very familiar face to Gamecock baseball fans. Did a lot of great things while he was here. Is going to be bringing his Charleston Cougars up I-26. A couple of things real quick. One more addendum to the drive around the SEC. Former Tennessee star player and head coach Kelly Harper named today as the new head coach at Missouri. So she's staying in the SEC.
She is.
Well, not staying. She wasn't in the SEC this season.
I mean, she technically was in the SEC this season because she was on the SEC
TV.
network.
Yeah, doing TV.
She saw them absolutely struggle in Greenville on the TV set that's over there in the corner.
That's right.
Behind the left baseline and said, you know what? I can fix them.
She's been at NC State. She's been at Western Carolina. And Elijah and I were just looking at it. She's in 20 years, she's been to the Sweet 16 9 times as a head coach. That's pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of that NC State and some at Tennessee too. And she, fun fact, the high school she went to was my high school's rival high school in my senior year when we played at White County. They retired her jersey in between the boys and girls games.
Yeah.
And then
Did you heckle her?
Wanted to, but they proceeded to kick our tail that game. So
Ooh.
I will. I always remember Kelly Harper. My first interaction with Kelly Harper, at least being in the same building as her, was her getting her jersey retired, and then her alma mater absolutely taking it to us.
We don't do a lot of things other than sports, unless it's like food or music or pop culture. But this is sort of fun. Any minute now, those astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams, that have been up in space for like, I don't know, a couple of years, it feels like. I think it's like 6 or 9, like 9 months, right? Yeah, 9 months. They're supposed to be there for a little over a week. Oof. They've been up there 9 months. Dude, I don't know how they haven't gone just what crazy.
Well, that's a horror movie.
It is, man.
Right there.
It is, but they are going to be splashing down off the coast of Florida any minute now. I've actually got the NASA feed pulled up here on my desktop. I mean, like when I say any minute now, like this is actually a pretty cool shot, Elijah. The parachute's out. So we're getting really close. God, this must be just the most nerve-wracking thing too. But the parachutes are up on the capsule, so any second now we are going to be splashing into the Atlantic Ocean. Out there, I can see the ocean.
They splashed it?
Not yet, but I can this shot here, and now they've gone to another one. I don't know if they have any more parachutes that come out. They've got like the two that kind of get you slowing down a little bit. But welcome home. I just can't imagine.
I can't imagine being away from my home for 9 months. I can't imagine being outside of the planet for 9 months.
Yeah. I mean,
That's terrifying.
they've put on a brave face. Like they've been showing them a bunch lately, especially like, no, it's been fine. Like, what else are you going to say?
At least, because I would be up there like, this sucks. Stuck up here. This sucks.
Yeah. All right, 2 more parachutes just popped out. So we got 4. So this puppy is slowing down now. Well, relatively speaking. And they got all kinds of numbers on this NASA feed. I have no idea like how fast this puppy's going. I'm sure we'll find out later. But anyway, welcome home, astronauts. Glad y'all made it. Oh, there's the ocean. And I hope we can get it before we come down. Come on.
We have a touchdown?
No, not yet. Oh, they're so close to it, man. All right, they made it. All right, good stuff.
While we were on air, too.
Good stuff. All right, there you go. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Welcome home, astronauts. Gamecock baseball coming your way in 15 minutes.